with the Pledge of Allegiance. Over here, Ed.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Means you get to take a roll. All right, thank you. So Cheyenne, will you take roll, please?
Here.
Here. Excused? Excused? Excused. And we do have a quorum. So the first item on the agenda is old business of approving the minutes of November 17th, 2022. With three of us, we're going to be limited in motions and seconds.
I'll make a motion that we approve the November 17 RDC meeting minutes as written.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Next is Buzz is not here, is he?
Yeah, I'm told Buzz will be here in just a few minutes, so if you want to move on to
Okay.
another item.
Yeah, we'll move to item C, the facade repair funding for Mozzi's Pizza. We talked about this in the last meeting. It was something I had brought up. Mozzi's had done a considerable amount of work to the front of their building. The year before we established our facade repair program. So I approached the committee with the idea of retro dating our program to include 2021. So that anyone in 2021 had done facade repairs could request funding, repair funding for their business. Mozzi's has provided those invoices. I forwarded them to everyone. So if there's any discussion.
I've looked over the invoices and he did do considerable work on the front of it and it does look real nice. And I see no reason for us not to reimburse him 50% of the total amount that he spent, which is $12,300. So I would like to make a motion that we reimburse Andy Clifton of Mozzi's Pizza $12,300.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Alex, do we need to make a motion to change our program to include 2021? Okay. Should we do that first?
Yeah, I would formally, you can amend your motion, Ed, to subject to changing the rules.
Hold on a
Or, yeah, amend the,
We can't hear you, Alex. Hang on. Too many remotes.
There you go.
Alex, can you give us a test?
can you hear me now? Oh, I can hear myself on the delay.
Yeah, we got a little echo. And a delay.
But you don't need to hear from me necessarily. I would amend the rules and then move forward with Ed's motion.
So can you make that? We'll hold off on the first motion. So we need a motion to amend the program to include 2021.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we amend the
Facade repair program.
facade repair program to include the year 2021.
Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on that? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Now, if you'll make your other motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we reimburse Andy Clifton of Mozzi's Pizza of the amount of $12,300. And that's to come out of our facade program. And that's equal to half the price that he has submitted on his invoices.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Being none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Buzz is not here. Is your presentation the long one? Okay. Well, he's not here, so. Can I get back to you on that? I'll call you tomorrow. I'll call you tomorrow. Yeah, let's just stick with the original plan. So we'll skip that item B for right now, and we'll move back to it after you guys are done, which is fine. So we'll move on to new business, which is consider proposal for funding the improvements to Landmark Park by Fortville Action Incorporated. Are we starting with Adam, or are we starting with members of Fortville Action?
Sure. For this, just to tee it up, for this particular item, this was a request that Fortville Action has proposed. They would like to do some improvements to Landmark Park, and they've already presented this information to the town council. And so they're hoping to seek funding for this endeavor through the Redevelopment Commission. So I think they wanted to present for you tonight, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to FAI.
If you would approach the microphone, state your name.
My name is Patrick Calhoun. I'm with Fortville Action Inc. I know some of you and some of you I don't, but nice to meet you, Mrs. Cheyenne. Okay. So as you probably know, Fortville Action Inc. has been around for about 10 years. And over that 10-year period, we have made, we've done, our goal has been to put on presentations and events in town that could help improve the quality of life of town by providing entertainment and help the businesses in the Main Street area. Some of those have included our music events in the summertime. And then we've done the Winterfest every year during that time period. Over the last year or so, we've decided that we should direct our energy and our funds towards doing some projects instead of events. And those projects, as some of you may know, have included the alley and the patio. And we have other ideas on how and some things we should do moving forward that could improve the quality of life in town. One of those has been, one of those ideas is to improve Landmark Park. So with that idea, we went ahead and contacted 2 landscape architect firms to help us solidify this idea and come up with a master plan. And those two firms are Prince Alexander, and there's a representative here tonight, Eric Muehlhausen from Prince Alexander, and Landworks, and Ben Howell is here from Landworks. So we have a master plan. We're trying to come up with a master plan. They're going to make this presentation and show you what that is. And after that, we'll talk about possibly getting some funding. So, and as Alex said, we've already made a presentation to the town council, and we have their support moving forward with this idea of doing some improvements. So I'm going to turn it over to these two guys so they can make their presentation.
Thank you.
Is everybody able to hear in the back? Okay.
Thank you, Pat. Hi, my name is Eric Muehlhausen with Prince Alexander Architecture, and my colleague Ben over here with Landworks. FAI came to us and kind of, as Pat said, mentioned some of the projects that they've been working on over the years, being the events, moving more towards physical projects, and they brought up Landmark Park, and they said, you know, there's this great location right in the heart of the city, and it's starting to use a little bit of polish. What can we do there? And so a little background, Prince Alexander, we're an architecture firm. We've been around for a few decades, been involved with lots of projects around the state. Most recently, the River's Edge Sports Park in Connorsville, and then the Byrne Clock Tower up in Byrne, kind of northeastern Indiana. Ben with Landworks has done a lot of work around the state, down in Bloomington, Greenwood, lots of great parks and main streets, things like that. So our role here will be to kind of collaborate and look at the park, look at some of the infrastructure, what kind of physical structures might be able to be included there. So on our next slide, basically it is a summary of what we're talking about doing. So we're going to look at the site, what's there, what could be done, and how can we improve it? So what can be done to help it on a larger scale? So can we do more events? How can we make the events better? But at the same time, how can we make it better for the daily users, for the community, that kind of thing. So our initial sort of steps were to look at the surrounding area, look at the trails, what's going on in and around the city and the county. How can we take advantage of some of those connections happening around the area? Also, what happens at the site? So what kind of events do you have? Everything from 4th of July, Cammy's Cause, that sort of thing. We also wanted to look and see what sort of infrastructure is already there. We've got a lot of great electricity, power, all sorts of resources there that we can tie into and take advantage of. And then what other features are currently there? The gazebo's nice. The fountain hasn't been working for a while, but there's a lot of great landmarks. So how can we elevate those, and how can we add to that to make it an even more enjoyable place? Next slide, please. So Ben's going to step up and kind of take a look at the 30,000 foot view. What's the region? What kind of connections are there?
Thanks, Eric. As Eric said, and Pat, my name is Ben Hool. I'm with Landworks. We're an engineering and land planning company out of Indianapolis. And what we kind of did when FAI came to us is we wanted to see what had been kind of looked at or envisioned already, and not just for Landmark Park, but kind of for overall for the region. So what you're looking at here on this sheet, there's kind of two slides next to each other. One's the Hancock County Trails Plan that shows kind of the interconnectivity of that area of Hancock County, of this area of Hancock County, and where the main trails are kind of coming through, where the bike trails are kind of coming through, what they think and what they've talked with Fortville about the interconnection there. And then the other piece is the Connect Fortville that was done 5 or 6 years ago. And that's for the trails. It was done by Fortville, and that's for the trails kind of through the area to see where Landmark Park kind of sits in that. So kind of taking those and together is, you know, the Landmark Park is in there as kind of a point of interest. There was kind of a greenway trail that looks like it was desired or thought through a little bit to kind of connect along the ditch there to connect Memorial Park to Landmark Park, and then potentially even heading out further east to connect into some of the items from the Hancock Trail Plan as well. Go ahead to the next slide. Thank you. Now zooming down in, just one coming down into Fortville, and obviously you guys are familiar with the area. What you see here is kind of a visualization of those trails that we talked about coming from the east, maybe going through Landmark Park, maybe then also connecting to the west over to Memorial Park, and really starting to create that connectivity that you could utilize for both the older neighborhoods and the newer neighborhoods to kind of come together and be able to utilize all the facilities that you guys have improved over the years. The other piece that's really important to see here is all the money, time, effort, programming that has gone into Main Street over the past 10 years, and how close Landmark Park is to that, and being able to utilize that as another tool, another programming tool, the ability to kind of expand that area and utilize the space a little bit better, open it up for those events as well. So that's kind of what we're pointing out here with a few potential key entry points. One there off of Church Street that then gives you access to the gazebo space, and then also to the open space as well. The potential waterfront walking path. There's a bridge crossing currently, and being able to connect that to the neighborhood with maybe a little bit of an improved crossing there one way or the other. You know, just starting to look at ideas of how to kind of interact with the neighborhood and start making all of these things happen to be able to bring it together a little bit. Now going from this and taking another kind of deep dive in straight into Landmark Park there, if you want to go to the next slide, Adam. Thank you. Now, we were just starting to toss around ideas, and this was talking out there and walking the park a couple of times and thinking about what you guys have utilized the park for in the past, reading through some of the things that you guys had planned for it previously, and acknowledging, you know, the infrastructure that's been put out there already with there's a couple of electrical bays. There's actually sewer and water that kind of goes through the park as well. So keeping those things in mind and taking a look at what could be used and how you could utilize it. This is just kind of an initial snapshot, but that exercise is what we want to build on. So what you see here is we're talking about maybe doing a covered stage. I know FAI had a few years back, summer concert series. So utilizing it for something like that again, potentially. Nothing, you know, massive necessarily, but something that's a little bit better than the concrete pad that's out there today, and connects into some of that infrastructure with the electrical potentially. So you could have a full-size band out there if you wanted to, that kind of thing. To be able to utilize it for also your 4th of July festival as well, as kind of a centerpiece for that. Potentially having restrooms or concessions out there. And believe me, we talked through this a lot with the city folks there about maintenance of that, when it might lock down, that sort of thing. Those details we haven't gotten into yet, but being able to have that as a resource out there, and not necessarily having to every time you have any sort of event, bring out the porta potties and have a spot for that and that kind of thing. But being able to have that as a resource and maybe even a storage room next to it or something like that as well. And then also, you know, where do we put like a connecting entry feature that maybe you could see visually and be drawn to as you're walking up and down Main Street, or vice versa, as you're in the park and you're drawn out there. So all of these things kind of start. So this is just about, but maybe that your stage goes to the other end of the park. Maybe session area moved around a little bit. Touching standards. The other thing we talked about potentially was maybe even a shelter of some sort that then would be, you could generate some revenue from potentially having people have the shelter for birthday parties or somebody doing yoga class once a week or something like that during a certain time period. And being able to have some different interactions there. So we're not trying to turn this into a memorial park with ball fields, playgrounds and all that kind of stuff. We understand and we think that it probably still needs to be kind of a passive recreation and a lot of open space to be able to accommodate these kinds of events and that sort of thing sometimes, but then also a lot of area where you can just walk around as a neighborhood for their dog, exercise and that sort of thing, and for reflection. Or on the other side, which could be the local landmarks are and that sort of thing. So you know, we're not trying to necessarily turn it into something that it's not, but maybe raise it up a little bit so it can be utilized as more of a bonus to what else.
So, we'd like to put together a series of papers and do a similar exercise and say, what do you like to do at the park now? What are some features that what's missing, what would you like, that sort of thing. So have a series of public with you all of the three neighbors and kind of gather a lot of input from the community so we can start to identify what really should really prioritize there. So with that, we would identify who the stakeholders are, obviously FAI, this is going to be involved in town, that are there other people that are involved financially or otherwise. Take those, all that information and we work together with people another meeting, so develop that plan together as we move forward. You know, it might be the phasing in this, so what sort of things to prioritize for the first part of the development that really could help everything else grow. So is it getting the covered stage out there, or is it kind of branding the park and getting some nice entryway features? So you know, figure out what's the most economically reasonable path forward for the project happen. So basic, and with that, we would have to work through the costs and kind of identify how much each portion of this item. So that's kind of how we see things going following. Following this.
The light was on, now it's off. I think the battery's dead. Yeah, the red light's off now. There you go.
Well, okay.
You can put it back up there if you don't want to hold it, but it's fine.
It's okay, I don't mind.
If you break out into song, though, we're gonna,
Can you go to the next slide for me, Adam? Thank you. So we developed a scope based on this, working with FAI, and after we had walked the facility a little bit and talked with some of the town folks and Pat and some of the other folks from FAI. And this is the scope that we kind of came up with, Eric and I together. And this is just kind of an echo of the last page that you saw, but kind of put into more of a, you know, an agreement kind of thing. So defining our goals and objectives, coming up with who the biggest stakeholders are, making sure that they're involved in the process, at least somewhat, understanding what's important to them, what's important to the town. Coming up with maybe a little bit of a target budget and timeline for a first phase. And then, you know, really taking an inventory, going around and identifying each plaque, maybe where that's from, what it's memorializing, you know, if a tree definitely needs to be kept, you know, marking those things off. And then how important other things are is that, you know, the fountain hasn't been operable for a while. And we know we don't necessarily want to maintain a fountain, but is keeping the fountain shape or something in that place important to us? Is bringing the gazebo back important to us? Those kinds of things, and kind of determining that with the stakeholders. So locating, photographing those, inventorying all those pieces and parts, and from that coming up with kind of opportunities and constraints for the park itself. So are we constrained by keeping certain portions? Are there other opportunities that we can look at in the open space, or do we need to have to keep a certain amount of the open space for what's important to the people and what they want to do? So that kind of thing from the inventory, and that will lead right into developing the concept plan. So coming up with a few options, working together on that to come up with, all right, this is what we think we're hearing. Here's some concepts of what, you know, not only the location of them, but maybe what that covered stage might look like. And is it important for you to have it be in a certain theme or a certain color, or wrapped in stone, or those types of things, you know, starting to analyze those a little bit, figuring those things out, and talking about those concepts with those stakeholders that we had previously identified. And then from there, coming up with kind of a plan for the implementation. So having a final kind of master plan of what those look like, where they are on the site, and then starting to prioritize how much does each section cost, what makes sense from a infrastructure standpoint of what goes when and how quickly it might go. And also, hopefully at that point, you know, Pat's worked his magic with FAI and they have some funding ideas. And maybe we have people that are willing to donate for a certain piece, but maybe not another piece yet. So starting to try to build that momentum and sticking those phases in there that way, starting to prioritize what you're talking about of which goes when. So coming up with that plan, and then a list of scheduling and permits for those types of things as well, so that you can then turn that around and go right into your first phase. I don't think Pat or Eric or I would want this to take 2 years. This is something that we think is probably capable of happening over a couple of months. And then together with the fundraising and starting to hopefully make things happen. And you know, I wouldn't see why we couldn't start on something next fall for an actual phase 1 starting to implement something. And on that, I'll hand it back over to Pat.
So, you know, moving forward, as you can see from this slide, there's some more specific services that are going to be needed other than coming up with this general plan that we presented to you tonight. And of course, those services require a fee. And you can see from the figure that's up there, it's going to cost us about $25,000 to move forward in coming up with a more specific plan and doing all the things that are listed up here on the slide. So what we're asking for tonight is the help of RDC to help fund this plan moving forward. Now, FAI, as the members have met, excuse me, and we've agreed to put in $5,000 towards the cost of this contract to move forward and come up with a more specific plan. And we're asking that the RDC help fund the remainder of that cost. So that's what we have. We don't know obviously you're going to have to think about this and make a decision. I have copies of the contract and, which I'll give each of you a copy of. I'm sure Alex would probably want to look at this as well.
You know, this whole plan ruins my riverboat casino. I live on the north side of that bridge that crosses. My toll bridge is not looking good either.
The toll bridge can be worked on.
Yeah.
But this is obviously you're gonna have to look at this. I'm sure Alex is gonna want to take a look at it. And, you can get back with us, as they say, or tell us what the next part of the process is and moving forward with whether or not you're gonna vote to approve a contribution towards this and whether or not you want to modify the contract in some way. So we're open for questions.
$20,000, right?
Yeah, FAI is going to contribute 5,000 towards this. We're asking for 20.
Well, I think that what you're doing here is good for the park area. It definitely is a good idea. And the only problem I can see is the neighbors with the music at different times, how they would approach and be acceptable to that.
And that would be part of the process, as we talking to the stakeholders, talking to the
Right,
neighbors, they would certainly have an opportunity to have input on what that park should look like and what could be done to mitigate any of their concerns
Right.
and make it reasonable to have events there in the future. So that's
Yeah.
all part of the process, but we can't move forward with that until we have this contract
Right.
signed.
And I definitely think this is something that the total count or board should vote on. I mean, we got two members that are not here tonight.
We didn't anticipate that you would be
Right,
voting
right.
on this evening. So yeah, we understand that completely.
So if I can throw something in there just from my side of it, if I can step away from the RDC for a minute, something that you may not have thought about yet on my side of the bridge and on the south side of the bridge is how to manage the people parking in my yard, in my neighbor's yard. Is there some way to facilitate some assistance to, and I don't know what that is, but I'll just tell you, that's my only issue with anything happening in Landmark Park. We love everything that goes on there. But the creek front path, is that something that's going to run along Stottlemyre ditch, or what's
Yeah,
the initial plan?
There isn't one. I mean, that's just kind of an idea based on what we had seen from the Hancock County Trails Plan, from what you guys had put together previously with the Fortville plan as well. So we just thought it was an interesting thing to kind of put on along with the potential other things we were hearing about. I know there were some comments that went around an email previously too about maybe we could fill in the ditch and make that the path or something like that. That could get expensive pretty quickly. But all of those things I would say are possibilities. Right now, like along that ditch, not very nice. There's a couple of big concrete pieces and a couple of other things there where the sewer used to come out and that kind of thing. So, but maybe revamping that a little bit and having, whether it's just a mulch path or like gravel fines or something like that to be able to walk on through there. Just an idea as kind of a start of trying to connect, especially over to the Memorial Park. I think that would be a good idea long term to be able to connect them.
Now that is a county waterway, right? And so any work you do on that would have to be approved through the county too.
Yeah. Just what we're trying to get, what we're trying to do is present ideas. These are
Right.
talking points. Right. None of this is cut in stone.
Right.
This is just like, here's a general idea. Here's some of our ideas. Let's get started. And from this is a starting point from which we will expand or contract if necessary, based on the feedback we get from all the stakeholders in the town and both in
Yeah.
terms of the town council, the RDC, the business community, and the people who actually live in the area.
Yeah, and Stollmeyer ditch does need some attention to beautify it.
Like a riverboat. Never mind that. And that discussion's out there, and I think.
That-
it-
Yeah, that
it's-
discussion is yet to be had.
Yeah, but it's partially out there. I thought all of you were copied on that, but there's a lot to discuss. So have you put together a projection on what kind of money overall you're going to need for this project? You're not even near that yet.
No, we're not near that, and I don't think it's fair to anyone to even throw a figure out there
Right.
at this point in time, because who knows where this will go when we start having. As I said, it could get expanded to something much bigger than obviously what this shows, or it could be something much smaller, but until that time, I don't think it's fair to say what a price tag will be.
That led me down a path of this 25,000. It's for your organizations, correct? Okay, so I would hope you can answer this question. So if we say, yeah, we'll give them the 25 grand. You get your first meeting with the residents there.
Yep.
And I know a couple of them.
Yeah.
I'm married to one of them, and then the other one across the ditch. I'm not sure how he's going to receive it, but what if this thing dies in the first month that everybody hates it? Is that 25 grand gone, or is this something that's incremental in the amount of work you do?
That's a good question.
It's definitely incremental. And like we had it broke down on the other sheet, there's phases to it.
Mhm.
So if we start identifying those folks and chat about it, I would say you probably still want to have the inventory done to understand where everything is and, that kind of thing. Maybe even the survey portion of it done. So you have that in your back pocket in case anything near there happens. But yeah, the rest of it, if it dies on the vine and nobody wants to do anything there and they're happy with the way that it is, then absolutely. we
I
would
don't see
sell
that
it.
happening, but
Yeah, me either.
I get paid big money to ask these questions.
There you go.
Well, out of one of the 5 members on this commission, I'm interested in it.
Good.
But I think there's a lot of details and conversation to be done before we commit to the 20,000.
And I probably differ with you on that. And that's okay, because there's 3 of us and we have to make the decision together. But Alex, are you still there?
Yes.
Playing.
Sorry. I didn't-
We can even hear you. If we were to approve the funding, can we control it through invoices like we do with other items?
Absolutely.
The
And I
maximum
would-
amount?
Not only can you do that, but I would recommend that you do maintain that level of oversight to ensure that the money spent is being utilized in the fashion that the RDC approves.
Could I add that since FAI is going to make a contribution to this as well, that we be part of that process?
Oh, absolutely. We're going to spend your money first. And actually, we'd have to discuss that. I mean, if we would agree to the 20, are we going to split those first invoices till your money's used up? Are you going to pay it? Are we going to pay it? I mean, that's something. Okay. And I respect Ed's opinion that we should have all our members here, but I feel like some of these things they couldn't be here and we can't wait on some things.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, you're thinking we need more detail. You want to get more detail to make a bigger
No.
decision, or you want?
No.
I'm not
No.
understanding anything.
But I'm trying to persuade Ed that we could make a decision tonight if he's so inclined.
And
But we can't make that decision if he's not inclined.
Gotcha.
because it takes all three of us to agree. So if Ed's not open to that, and that's absolutely his right, and I respect that, then we're going to leave it and we'll wait until next month, which is not ideal because we only meet once a month.
The other
So-
thing I would suggest is that obviously you wouldn't be signing anything tonight. So that
It would be subject to-
subject to review.
Yeah,
and that sort of
Alex is
thing
gonna
as
have to
well.
review the contract, make
Absolutely.
sure we're not in on anything we're not
Yep.
supposed to be in.
Yep,
Our approval would be subject to him approving that
absolutely.
and all that.
Yep.
So,
Hey, Scott, it's Robert.
yes, sir.
If it's any consolation, the council did approve well, not that the council provided RDC approval, but the council provided approval for this to proceed to establish the scope of the project. So a couple of things there. So the council did give its blessing for this to proceed. And if that's any consolation to you, Ed, I think that there's wide support for this. But if you want to wait till the following month, I'm with Scott. I completely respect that decision. If you want more information or you want the entire RDC's vote on that, there's certain things that are important enough that, that's certainly, you guys can do that. The other thing, back to Pat's point, is we don't know how big this may go or if it's going to end up getting scaled back. And I think that, Scott, you're right. I think that starts absolutely with the neighbors there in the direct surrounding area. How far out you go, I don't know. Leave that up to you guys and Adam to work out. But the motion the council made was for this to proceed to determine that scope, right? And then come back to the council for further conversation. And then obviously with the RDC as well. So kind of a checkpoint, if you will. Before any of
You had
those
all that
decisions.
discussion and you didn't approve 20,000 for him?
So, I mean, obviously the council was okay with giving their blessing for this to move forward. We didn't discuss the dollars and cents of how much it was going to cost. If I recall, Pat, I don't see Pat on the screen anymore. The comments that were made to the council was, we're not here to ask you for money tonight.
And your recollection is correct.
They were all ears at that point.
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
RDC money. We're listening.
No, this
I'm
is
just-
the landmark
kidding.
park is such a huge, it's almost like the crown jewel, right? I mean, this is going to be a whatever is done there, large or small, is going to be a highly visible project. So the community input is critical, and the RDC input and the council input ultimately is critical on this.
If I can address Ed's concern, we're kind of in a no man's land. We can't really give you some of the information that I think you're wanting to make a better informed decision without moving forward to do some of the things that are required in terms of getting our stakeholders involved and making making contacts with the neighbors. But that requires their help in doing this and some guidance. So we're kind of like, that's just the point we're at. It's difficult to move forward to give you those answers without getting involved in this content.
I know what Ed's referring to. This committee, short of this guy, is a very smart group of people with very ingenious thinking, and they think things through very well. So the input of all members has been critical all year with different ways of thinking, but I interrupted you, so go ahead.
Just to recap the conversation we just had. So you're saying that we should approve the 20,000 for them to go forward with their planning, with it being proactive if it falls through, or prorated if it falls through. And also that all this information will be critiqued before it's actually finalized. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes. Absolutely. Yes.
My suggestion would be is if you're open to it, and again, I can't reiterate enough, if you're not, it's okay. What I would suggest is we approve the 20 if everyone is inclined, with the stipulation that the invoices come through us. We split the bills as they come in until your $5,000 is gone. So we get a bill for 3,000, we pay 1,500, you pay 1,500. When your $5,000 is gone, then we'll absorb the rest of that until the R 20 is gone.
We have members of our executive committee here, and if they agree to that, I would say
That,
we agree.
that would
with
be all right with everybody?
Okay, make a motion.
I think we should also just, for some housekeeping things, say that Alex needs to take a look at the contract.
It would be
Approve
subject
the
to his.
stipulated on Alex approval.
So the motion we're looking for is
Yeah.
the 50-50 until their $5,000 is gone. But the stipulation is that Alex needs to review the contract and agree that we're okay.
So you, go ahead.
Our plan, master plan, on the condition that Fortville Action $5,000 and our contributions to it. So the bills come to the redevelopment for approval, and that Alex reviews the contract and signs that fine before it's signed.
I think so.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Just to be clear, I think she stated it correctly, but we've already talked about it, so it's a matter of record. That as invoices come in, we're gonna pay half, you're gonna pay half. When your $5,000 is gone, we'll finish paying until the $20,000 is gone. All of it's subject to Alex's approval of the contract. If there's no other discussion, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Congratulations. And you owe me for my riverboat down deposit.
I'll just say, Alex, I'll send you a copy of the contract. I think I still have your email address.
Yeah, sounds good, Pat. Email is still the same, and if you don't have it for some reason, we can connect.
Yeah, I'll get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll go back to old business. Consider paying off the Main Street Reconstruction Project commitment to Mr. Crone.
Okay, Buzz, don't be throwing us a lot of technical stuff now because you're talking about a bunch of old people up here now.
No problem. Is this thing, is the red light on?
Yeah.
Yes.
Make sure my brother's stuff is working here. Anyhow, yeah, we thought the MPO project, which is still, I think, still ongoing. Is there still some projects left to finish on that? It was sort of on the stellar, but we had a commitment from the RDC for $55,000 a year for 10 years to coincide with the initial bond anticipation note that was issued a little over five years and 1 month ago. That bond anticipation note was at 2.5%. It automatically rolled over to a bond issue last month because we could only do a ban for up to 5 years. And that was all pre-planned that way. And we'll have another principal payment coming up in January 1st. There'll be a principal and interest payment. And we just thought it would be a good time to see whether or not the RDC might want to consider prepaying its obligation on that to just sort of get rid of that nuisance payment. That would relieve any obligation going forward on those bonds. And then it also puts the town in a position where the bond is small enough that they could consider perhaps doing something similar. They could either accelerate their payments and shorten the term, or maybe look at, they've got some other issues coming up with juggling some of the other finances of the utilities where there may be some opportunities to look at some prepaid pilot payments or some other things that we haven't really discussed yet with the town council, but we thought we would bring it before you because obviously if the RDC is not in favor of inclined to prepay that, then that principal amount's still at a pretty high level that, the town would probably just stick with it. The interest rate did go up to 3.83%. And so that's fixed for the next 5 years. So at least we got that out of the way. The prime went up another 50 basis points yesterday. So, we're locked in at the 3.83 for the remainder of the term of the bond, but we have no prepayment penalties or anything like that with Greenfield Bank. They've been extremely generous and accommodating to the town in a number of ways, but also on this MPO project financing. And so it would produce just the interest savings by prepayment would save about $27,000 or $28,000. I sent out a email last night, got late, but I thought it would just sort of lay out the issues before we had the meeting tonight. That and we do have pretty healthy reserve now with the TIF program maturing and generating funds that back in 2004 or 5 when this all started, and that was pretty thin time back then, but there's obviously an enormous need for projects that only could be done with the TIF program. I think your park project is a classic example. Quality of life improvements are extremely important for fostering economic development. And I think, the MPO project is certainly an example of those quality of life type of improvements. But I guess the bottom line is, and we are not in a knee-jerk situation at all, but we decided it might be, since it's just rolled over and we've got a payment date coming up in a couple of weeks, we thought it would be a good time to at least broach this issue with the RDC, and then that pay down could be accommodated on the January 1st payment. They'll probably actually make that payment December 30th or December 31st if we're so inclined. But we wanted to just raise it and see if there's a interest in doing that. If there isn't right now, or if you want to think about it, we can do it again in July 1st. There's payment dates coming up then. But again, we just thought it would be timely to, since it just rolled over and we have this payment coming up in January. It's maybe more of a nuisance payment for the RDC to have to do that every year, and certainly provide some interest savings for the city overall if we did have a prepayment opportunity in January, and I think then it puts it in a situation where we'll probably try to have a workshop with the town council and looking at all their debt. They've got water bonds or bans outstanding that still have about a 3-year life left, and they've got sewer project. They've got several sewer bonds out there, and probably a sewer project coming up not too distant future. So there's a lot of things out there that again, we just thought it would be a good idea to just at least run it by you all and see if there's interest in doing that. If not right now, we can look at it again in 6 months. But
So what's the disparity between the potential 27,000 or the 27,800 versus the 44,000? Where does that come in?
44,000 would be if the town that would then accelerate their payments by maintaining. Right now, we're paying about 150,000 a year in combined principal and interest payments, and the town is on the hook for about the pilot payments, I believe we get 60,000 from the wastewater and 40,000 from the water utility. So that's where their funding on this comes from. Those are by pilot, I mean payment in lieu of taxes. It's a live in a world of acronyms anymore, but they make payments to the civil city in lieu of the taxes that the city could have received if the utilities were privately owned. And those were put in place specifically for this MPO project. And
So our, if we would decide to do the 275, that just simply drops the principal balance from 730 down to 455 approximately.
yeah, actually, the payment, the additional 275 would bring the because we're going to make the regular payment anyway, which is, I think, 68,500, a little less than that. But the extra 275 would buy the remaining principal balance down to 390,000. And so then that's in a range where the town might consider doing something to pay those off quicker, or
So are we talking 275 plus our 55 payment or a grand?
no, that would satisfy the 55 for the next 5 years.
Yeah, our share of it.
Yeah.
So that 27,000, who realizes that savings?
The
The town or the RDC?
the town.
The town, okay.
basically, yeah. It's the town's bond, and the RDC has a pledge for payments towards that. Yeah, the town would realize those savings.
So the entire driving force in the whole concept and idea at this point, it brought you here tonight, is saving the interest.
Saving the interest and then putting the town in a little more flexible position where they could consider doing some things to accelerate on their end. Again, these bonds are not property tax backed bonds, they're general revenue bonds. So each year the town has to go through an appropriation of those pilot funds through the general fund and make their payments, and whether they would choose to keep the payment level at $150,000 level by putting forth additional funds. That would shorten the payoff by about 1.5 years or maybe 2 years. And, you know, they could consider doing something even on a more accelerated basis, which we haven't discussed with the town yet, but it would just puts them in a more flexible situation to, you know, sort of manage all the other debt that they have on their plate, and what eventually we'll have to roll over there's an $11 million water bond anticipation note that we'll have to roll over at some point. So we'll be looking at that, and right now that's got a 2.5% interest rate. So it might be good to keep that for the remainder of its term, and then in the meantime they could consider perhaps making other funds available to pay this down on a faster track. But we haven't had a chance to discuss that with council yet, but the RDC decision would certainly have a lot of influence in providing that flexibility to the town.
Sorry, I'm just doing a little math. I have my shoes on, so it takes me a few minutes. So tonight we allocated out approximately 32,000. That would bring our non-committed available funds down to 1.648 million. Minus another 275 would bring us down to 1.2 million. 1.273.
Yeah,
But in June, we did realize our TIF was 600,000, 650. And then another 480 in from November into December.
Yeah.
1.1 million for last year.
Have they got the December distribution yet from?
Yeah, we got a copy of it here.
It shows on here, unless you just gave us 484,000 out of your pocket.
Which, I'm not sure which we're looking at. Is that the fund report?
Mhm.
Okay, I don't have a current fund report.
Here, you want one?
Yeah, I'd love one. So.
Yeah, down at the bottom on 12.8,
Mhm.
the county
And on this spreadsheet, it says the RDC income for 2022 was 1.1. You can have that. That's- Right. And
So you're up to 2 minus your commitment.
right, that's what I'm getting at is our non-committed
Yeah.
funds.
I do understand that there is a potential drain on that.
Yes.
Talk to Joe earlier today.
But I don't know that it's the potential drain there is. It's not to that degree, I'm sure, but. You guys have any questions for Buzz?
Well,
No,
the assessments went for next year, so.
he lost me when he walked up, and introduced himself.
Wow, that's kind of rude, isn't it? We're a friendly group here.
So, basically, in 6 months, we're gonna be getting this amount.
Another 6, at
Yeah.
least that. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
anticipate it to go down if,
It's probably,
And
yeah. Well,
so do we have any really outstanding commitments in the last 6 months or the next 6 months of this? Next
well,
year?
your 2023 commitments are right here. We've got 100,000 committed for next
Okay,
year.
we've committed 100.
Well, no, I take that back. It's only 50,000 because that 105 includes the 55,000 that we would be
Okay,
eliminating. So no,
but you do have another 20,000 that.
So we just,
you leave tonight.
yeah,
well, I've already
Okay, you've already got that. in.
subtracted that out.
I just wanted you to know I was paying attention.
But there's some other, like with some of these other bills, these are already coming, but Right. but those are pledged, so those are already accounted for.
Right, right.
It's important to keep the RDC fund strong.
Right. But I don't feel like we're. I mean, this is just my opinion. Everybody's got to agree or disagree, but I don't think taking us down to 1.27 is draining us. With the knowledge that there's another 600 coming in June. Based on the projects we have the potential to bring on.
do we,
I don't know.
I guess that would be, okay, do we foresee any additional 2021 projects for the facade coming through? Or would that just be within our 25?
It's in that
Yeah.
facade program.
So, I mean, the most savings we're gonna see is if we pay it now versus we could come back in 6 months, but we'd be paying interest between then and now. It's tight purse strings say.
Yeah. Well, if the three of us can't see any foreseen spending that's not already scheduled on our commitments here, I really can't see a problem when we're getting our June payment, which is only 6 months.
Yeah, the reason June's a little higher than the December is because some people pay them both at the same time, so.
Mhm.
But it looks like you've got, over 1.1 million total. And distributions for 2022, and I would expect that those are gonna be higher next year. The, that we're seeing in the county.
Joe or Alex, do you see any upcoming large things that's going to affect us in the first 6 months of 23 with South Madison?
Actually, probably gonna mention, not heard of cost payment. Things you guys are gonna allocate. But if you remember the Stella project. So you guys are obligated for up to 500,000. Is that Broadway in your?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think,
there,
yeah.
It's figured in there.
yeah, the Broadway is figured into our committed funds. The 500,000, yeah.
Yeah.
Because right now, the total RDC funds is 2.8 million. And that one, we'd write the whole 500 up front, right? I like the way you think.
Yeah, we still have some erosion left over. We will go towards that before.
Yeah, once we get the number in, we'll send some info for maybe 30 days. So it's gonna be pay that. That's gonna pay the majority of our trails that we have left. Pay up front, with the exception of the one leg of the trail was completing it. The property, the main acquisition.
We think there's gonna be MPO bond funds left over. Because that would be certainly a source of paying off the city's portion of that bond also.
Well,
Okay, what do we call this? I mean, is that the title of the bond?
Yeah, it's the Main Street Reconstruction project. Is that,
Yeah.
if we make a motion to do this, what are we calling it?
I guess just a motion to prepay the MPO bond commitment.
For the Main
lump-
Street
in a
project?
lump sum, and then that would alleviate any future responsibility from the RDC for ongoing MPO bond payments. The town would.
We're not gonna make that big of a motion, but
Yeah.
you just need us to say that we
Motion to Prepay.
prepay the
the
MPO
lump
loan.
sum, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we prepay the MPO bond of the amount of
275,000. 275.
yeah, $275,000.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion, comments? No, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Does appreciate your help and time. Next on the agenda is review of financials, which we just did very thoroughly. If there's no other discussions, look for a motion to approve this.
I'll make a motion to approve the financials as presented.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Any public? We have no invoices to review. Any public comment? There being none? Staff comments?
Might
None
ask.
for me unless you have any questions on anything.
No. Any board comments? She's back there. Okay.
Hey,
With
Scott.
that,
Chairman, I
Yes.
just want to say thank you guys for approving that. I think that was a very smart decision. It provides the town some flexibility. It's kind of a no-brainer, but I'm glad that you guys really vetted that and had some good discussion on it. Much appreciated. And appreciate all the
Thanks.
jobs you guys did all year long too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
With that, we're adjourned at 7:40.
Good night.
Yeah,
Thanks,
See ya.
everybody.